Hey, I want to get into this subject here about optimizing and researching fantasy sports. And real quick, what I'm showing you is different optimizer tools, everything from Draft Dashboard to DFS Army to the Sports Line projection system as some of the more popular ones out there, and some, of course, of which you can subscribe to and get more info. For more of the free cider version, you could probably also go to Daily Fantasy Sports Rankings.com. I get a lot of good results sometimes if I have in the past just by taking some of their projection model rankings and using them in cash games, only for cash games in particular. But when you kind of go over and all this flood of information, it's especially overwhelming in various ways. As of course there's articles and many things to look at, and I've sort of taken people from the beginner aspect in my videos and also articles, and been teaching some basics. But there's a lot more in-depth strategy, research, and information to get into. I've also talked about spreadsheets before. I want to show you an example here of one that here is very reliable and done for you in good, accurate numbers. I find though sometimes it differs from the actual numbers. For example, the weighted on base percentage would be different sometimes on this site compared to the DFS Army. I don't know why. I've seen it off as an example of like, I don't know what percentage, maybe off by 10%, something to that effect. I don't know if it's because of the updating. I'll have to do some more research into that perhaps, but this is a ton of info here, only for this tab here on the spreadsheet. Today's batter matchups, kind of like the Excel version in the MLB, and this of course will be done in football as well this year. So if you have a subscription, you get all this info, great. But it amounts to some of the basic factors, such as park factors that go into a hitter's park, pitcher's park, to name some of these. Really, I'm going to try and go over all of them really quick, as basically the 9 factors of it. Also weather factors that go into play, of course, and heat and temperatures, of course, and rain. Also injuries, of course, important, as how a player is doing, especially a pitcher. All this data. It's probably not even available here later in the day on this Sunday, by the way. No players found to really show you a specific example. I can probably pull up my watch players, though. Let me see here. That was from yesterday, Saturday. To give an example of like, this is called a dash rank, which I do consider these factors such as their past scoring log, their projected points, how many they're supposed to get, the season value per point, lefty righty weighted advantage, platoon advantage. That's another factor that's important. Also whether they're regressing or increasing in their value, which is the season value actually helps here on this site, which is not provided on this site, I noticed. But there's a something over here which is called a safety value right here. You can sort ascending and descending, or you can put a more specific number as far as a number equaling. So you can see, for example, with Matt Carpenter, 92% safety value is pretty good. That was for the day of Sunday with his team. And then, of course, when you stack, it gets much more complicated. You can even put in this tool here, for example, when you're stacking or trying to get players up in a lineup, as another important factor, batting 1 through 5 perhaps, and all these various positions, and trying to evaluate. No. Okay, so you have all these things going on here, such as some of the more important factors here, though, in this spreadsheet. The WOBA, which is closely related to the OPS, the ISO, very important factor, which is like hitting, home run percentage, sort of, pretty much related to that. Park factors, and you see as he slides this over, it becomes much more in-depth and complicated. The Vegas factors, their projections are estimated as accurate many nights. The opponent's bullpen, so the pitching, of course, defensive factor there, and how this is all weighted out. The overall stats, swinging hard contact, It goes on and on and on. The splits lefties, splits home and away factors, all these different things. As you can see here, of course, needless to say, it is very overwhelming in the pitcher, recent results and all sorts of other things. If I forget to mention anything of importance, of course, like a pitcher's, well, let's see the pitcher's stats here. Starting pitcher matchups, the ERA, separating that from the Sierra, and looking at handedness, of course, as well, lefties and righties, and the matchups, contact rate, and so on. And it goes on endlessly with all these stats. How in the world would you sort all these things out? So if you get my point here now, it's not about the tools that will help you succeed. It's about how you use them and your process is going into factoring in. So I'm not going to exactly get into that here on this video, but I'm just showing you right now how it's important to rely on a process, what process you develop and use as far as cash games, which are easier. They really are easier as opposed to putting yourself into 50 different tournament lineups. Even if they're 25 cents, for example, like a FanDuel, a lot goes into that and trying to stack the right players and separate in order to do so. So you want to do these things, but let's get into it more in future articles and videos, and talk to you all later.